Well,
Hello there.
and as my good friend Anakin Skywalker would say,
This is where the fun begins.
alright, I'm sorry, it's Revenge of the Sith, I know, but I had to get a couple good memes in there, right? I mean, it is Revenge of the Sith, after all. Welcome back to Access Blockbusters, everybody, and welcome to the third installment of Star Wars Reexamined, where in today's episode we are going to be talking about, well, I'm not going to bury the lead here, the best prequel, Revenge of the Sith. Episode 3, released in 2005. Revenge of the Sith is, well, it's what the prequels really should have been from the beginning. I think if the prequels had started here, I don't think anybody really would have been complaining, and then you could have drawn it out. If you had started here, you could really begin to establish the turn of Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader. That's what the prequels really should have been, rather than having him just be a boy and then an angsty teen. And I think it just makes a lot more sense to start. But anyways, it's all in a hypothetical world. We could do a whole series of videos of what if Star Wars Episode 3 was in fact Star Wars Episode 1. But regardless, this is what we got. And yeah, it's pretty good. It's not amazing. I don't even think it's great. It's not good in some parts. In fact, in some parts it's pretty bad. But overall, I think Revenge of the Sith is pretty okay, if not pretty good. Now, I'm not one of those people who say Revenge of the Sith is one of the best Star Wars movies of all time. I think there are just far too many laughable and pretty bad things in this movie, in my opinion, that just can't make it get to that top tier. But every time I watch this movie, I do enjoy it. There's a lot more enjoyable than not. In fact, I talk about in the other two reviews how, while The Phantom Menace and especially Attack of the Clones, in my opinion, are not great films, there are good elements in both of them. For example, in The Phantom Menace, I think that, for the most part, everything not about Jar Jar Binks and not really oriented towards kids is pretty fine. It's pretty okay, and it's at least entertaining, the sense that it's a kid's movie. Attack of the Clones, everything that's not Anakin and Padme is pretty good. And what sets this movie apart from the other two is that about 60 to 70% of this movie is very watchable, and in fact, some of it is very good. 30% of it is somewhat unwatchable to somewhat atrocious, but it doesn't overwhelm the story. Like, that 30% is really sprinkled throughout the movie to where it reminds you every once in a while, you're like, oh yeah, this is the same guy, George Lucas, who made Attack of the Clones, and this is the same guy who made The Phantom Menace. But there are also hints pretty frequently that make you go, oh, this is the same guy who developed Star Wars Episode 4 and Episode 5 and Episode 6. And that's honestly really encouraging to see. So as we have done with the previous two episodes, let's go through the plot and talk about all the different things that I liked and all the things that I didn't like in Revenge of the Sith. But before we get there, if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, please make sure to subscribe, give this video a like down below, and let me know if you're enjoying these Star Wars rewatch videos. I've been really enjoying actually rewatching the Star Wars films in a new light and a new perspective, and I hope to enjoy them even more down the line. Hopefully, Attack of the Clones will be the last quote-unquote bad Star Wars movie that we run into. Fingers crossed. We'll see. Alright, so Revenge of the Sith opens with this giant battle on Coruscant, and right away, the visual effects are so much better than in Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones has some pretty decent visuals, as did The Phantom Menace, but Revenge of the Sith opening with this ginormous, catastrophic battle above Coruscant, it is beautiful. It's great to watch. I do sometimes laugh when I see Revenge of the Sith, the opening, when you see Anakin and Obi-Wan's, what are they, Jedi Interceptors or Jedi Fighters just rolling and doing barrel rolls in the air in sync, almost like they're synchronized swimmers or something. It's kind of funny because, I mean, they're literally in sync. Anyways, it's just a minor detail. But one of the things you'll notice right away, and say what you will about the prequels, but all three of them have this, and I think this third film especially, is that there just is a cinematic quality about the film. This is a movie. This is a film meant to be seen in theaters. And going back to the previously released Obi-Wan Kenobi series, or even the Book of Boba Fett, and even a couple episodes of The Mandalorian, you can tell that they were made for TV. There's just something about the way that the camera moves where it's close up or it's shaky, or the background just kind of looks, I don't know, not quite there, that you can tell it's really not cinematic. But this, say what you will about the CGI in certain places, but this is made for film. Also, it is immediately apparent how vastly improved Hayden Christensen's performance as Anakin Skywalker is. My goodness, it is night and day from Attack of the Clones. Now, we will see the Attack of the Clones Hayden Christensen a little bit here and there throughout this film, but for the most part, especially at the beginning, it is a different character altogether. It is so much better, in fact, that I can almost imagine the Matt Lanter Clone Wars version having been in between episodes 2 and 3 and developing into this character that we see in episode 3. It's not quite there. Like, I still think that the Clone Wars Anakin Skywalker is pretty distinct from the Hayden Christensen Anakin Skywalker. And to me, like I've always said on this channel, the Matt Lanter Clone Wars Anakin Skywalker is the definitive Anakin to me. But still, it's just such a big difference. You can see the banter between him and Obi-Wan. He feels more relaxed. He feels more assertive. He feels more like a Jedi. He doesn't feel like a whiny, angsty teenager. And that works wonders in the beginning of this film. The one thing about this opening space fight I will say is that it does feel a little overindulgent. Like, we do spend a really sizable chunk of this movie just on Grievous's ship and in space, which is fun. It's fine. It doesn't do a ton to develop the story other than rescuing the Chancellor and the Count Dooku stuff. It does feel a little bloated, and I understand that the original cut of this movie was something like 4 hours, and this entire space battle was something like an hour to 2 hours, which is pretty crazy, but it's kind of understandable once you see it. But the stuff that is relevant to the story is obviously the Palpatine stuff and Anakin Skywalker murdering Count Dooku, and that stuff is always really great. I mean, Ian McDiarmid, even more so in this film, he really gets to shine. This is really more so than the original trilogy, more so than anything he did in The Rise of Skywalker. This is really his magnum opus for the Star Wars franchise. This is where he gets to shine. We'll get to the later parts when he actually turns into the Emperor, but for now, at least in the beginning, just that subtle manipulation of Anakin Skywalker and that pushing and goading towards the dark side, it works superbly. Although again, and we're getting into nitpick territory here, I mean, it's really not a nitpick though, but in the grand scheme of Star Wars, it kind of is. Why doesn't Dooku say anything? I mean, if the Sith really hate each other, when Anakin is about to kill Count Dooku, why don't you just say in that moment, hey, by the way, that guy's my master? Because, I mean, Count Dooku knows he's going to die, right? He doesn't lose anything by saying something at that point, right? I don't know, maybe he really was that loyal to Palpatine. So then they go and crash land on Coruscant. Obi-Wan and Anakin have some fun banter. Anakin's performance, Hayden Christensen's performance is a little wooden here, and we do get the reunion between Anakin and Padme, and right away, once they reunite and start talking, it is Attack of the Clones Anakin all over again. I don't know what it is about George Lucas writing this love story dialogue, but it never works. It's so jarring. When he's writing the dialogue between Anakin and Obi-Wan, it feels more natural. It feels like banter. When he's writing the dialogue between Anakin and Padme, it feels like something just entirely from a different movie. It's quite bizarre, actually. And I don't think Hayden Christensen quite knows what to do with the dialogue either. He just kind of says it, and I don't think that's his fault. I think George Lucas was directing him to say it like that. But again, this is the part of the movie where I go, it's really not quite working here for me. Although I do have to say that Hayden Christensen's performance when Padme tells him that she's pregnant, that stuff I think was pretty good. It was actually probably some of the best performance in the entire prequel trilogy, so kudos to him for that. Anyway, speaking of Jedi, well, I didn't really say Jedi, but speaking of Jedi, the Jedi Council in this movie they're kind of dumb. I mean, they're kind of dumb in the entire prequel trilogy. They're just like, hey, our ability to use the Force is diminished. We should inform the Senate. We can't use the Force anymore. And then Mace Windu's like, oh, Count Dooku would never do that. He was a Jedi. And then he's like, well, there's a Sith Lord here. I just something about the Jedi Council. Like, I understand that the point of all of this is that they're very arrogant and full of hubris, and that's really their downfall. But I don't think they're stupid, right? I could be wrong, maybe, but it kind of came across that way. Not sure. And then from here, I mean, basically we have 3 subplots going on for the rest of the film until it kind of converges into the end with the 2 fights, Palpatine, Yoda, and Anakin and Obi-Wan. So let's talk about the 3 separate subplots, kind of going chronologically, heading into Order 66. So I'll start with Yoda and the Wookiees on Kashyyyk. I mean, as much as I love Yoda, and as much as I love Chewbacca, this subplot to me felt the most unnecessary. In fact, I honestly don't think it needed to be in this movie at all. I really don't know why it's in this movie, other than to sell toys, obviously, and have more Yoda, and to put in Chewbacca, which was completely unnecessary. I mean, George Lucas does the same thing with C-3PO and R2-D2. Do they need to be in the prequel trilogy? Do they need to be owned by Anakin Skywalker? No, because, I mean, Luke Skywalker finds them in The New Hope, and it doesn't make much sense, especially knowing what R2-D2 knows throughout the entire Skywalker saga. And I don't know, it's just kind of weird that Chewbacca just knows Yoda, especially now knowing where he ends up with Solo and Solo: A Star Wars Story, which is, by the way, the next film that we're going to be watching in this re-examining series. But it's just, it feels so extraneous and odd that every time we keep cutting back to it, I'm like, no, this really isn't as interesting as it should be. Let's get back to the other stuff. The other 2 big subplots are Obi-Wan on Udapal and Anakin and Palpatine and Padme, basically. So let's talk about Obi-Wan and Udapal. This stuff is also It's not as extraneous because obviously they need to kill General Grievous to end the war. The funny thing about this subplot, though, is that it really doesn't make any sense to anybody who hasn't seen the Clone Wars series because, I don't know, if I were somebody who hadn't seen the Clone Wars and just watched episodes 1, 2, and 3, I would be really confused about the villain presence. Like, why do you just kill Darth Maul just to have Count Dooku, then to kill Count Dooku just to have General Grievous, who isn't even a Sith, but he has 4 arms and blue and green lightsabers? It's really confusing. That's why I'm so glad for the Clone Wars series, fleshing everything out. It just helps make the characters feel more realized and three-dimensional, and you kind of understand that this is really a culmination now. It's not just a random droid with lightsabers who's fighting Obi-Wan. It's a culmination of the droid general fighting one of the best generals in the Clone Wars in Obi-Wan Kenobi. And in that sense, I can really enjoy this sequence, although I can understand why a lot of people might not. It's really good just because it's Ewan, and I feel like that's something that you just say a lot with the prequels because, I mean, like the sequel trilogy, in my opinion, with Adam Driver and Kylo Ren, the prequel trilogy, there were a couple characters and actors who pretty much escaped unscathed, and I think Ewan McGregor obviously was one of them, getting his own series later in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I think it's just fun to watch Ewan play Obi-Wan, so I think that's really what makes the subplot work. And then finally, you have the whole Anakin, Padme, and Palpatine stuff. Now, I think, personally, that the setup to Anakin's turn to the dark side is really compelling. I love that you bring back this idea of the visions from Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, the idea that he sees Padme dying, because obviously Padme is one of the most important things to him. Obviously, it wasn't executed super well in Attack of the Clones with their whole Shakespearean love story, but I did get the sense that, you know, Padme means a lot to him. So the fact that he sees her dying in his visions, especially after seeing his mother die, correctly, by the way, in his visions, I totally get why he would become scared. I wish we saw a little bit more of that fear. I think you see a little bit in his conversation with Yoda, which I really liked, but I think you more just see kind of this determination of like, yeah, I'm gonna stop it, rather than just like, I'm scared because I see these visions. I wish we kind of got both sides of that. And so anyways, I think that the setup is there. It's really compelling. And then he has the conversation with Palpatine in that weird theater audience scene where he's talking about Darth Plagueis, which again, I mean, everyone says it, but it's one of the greatest scenes in the prequel trilogy for sure. So much lore and just great acting by Ian McDiarmid. And so you really get an insight into what Anakin is fearing and that he would do anything to save Padme. And obviously, we saw at the beginning of this film that he is sort of tapping into his rage and his anger when Palpatine is goading him on. And we see it in the Clone Wars. If you watch Clone Wars Season 7, for example, you see that scene where he kills Admiral Trench. Like, it's there. And especially if you've watched the Clone Wars, it's there. The problem with this, though, is not the setup. It's that he's set up to begin the turn to the dark side, and then he just does it. He goes from 0 to 100 really quick, and I know that this is a complaint that everybody has, but I mean, I'm just giving my thoughts on what I thought when I was watching this movie, and yeah, it's so rushed. Like, he doesn't even verify that Palpatine knows how to use this power. He just kind of is like, yeah, Palpatine, I pledge my allegiance to you, and henceforth you will be known as Darth Vader. Why? Why Darth Vader? Where do they come up with these names? Like, Maul is just Maul. He doesn't have a name. Count Dooku has a name, at least. Maul is just Maul, and Anakin is, well, Vader, I guess. I think that the scene with Mace Windu and Palpatine electrocuting himself, I think that that's good. I just think that between that scene and when Anakin finds out that Palpatine is a Sith Lord, but also the scene in the audience where Palpatine is talking to Anakin about Darth Plagueis, I feel like there's a whole movie that could have been in between where Anakin is kind of stewing on this information. Like, do I tell the Jedi Council? Do I not tell the Jedi Council? Meanwhile, just growing more and more paranoid that Padme is going to die. And, you know, there goes George Lucas again, literally having the characters say exactly how they feel. What have I done? I pledge my allegiance to you. George, come on. And it's not great as well that 5 minutes after that scene he's killing children. It's too much too fast. Like, I buy the eventual turn that Anakin has to the dark side, again, especially having watched the Clone Wars series, but not that quick. Anyways, I'll stop talking about that because once he does turn to the dark side, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's not cool. It's cool in the sense that it's terrifying and scary what Anakin turns into, but also cool, right? Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. So then Yoda and Obi-Wan head back to the Jedi Temple. Order 66 happens, which is a beautifully shot sequence. It's one of the best sequences in the prequel trilogy. In fact, in all of Star Wars, I think, where you see the clones turning on the Jedi. I wish they were real clones and not CGI clones, but whatever. Anyways, and then we get our final two basic subplots. You have Yoda against Palpatine, and you have Anakin versus Obi-Wan. Now, like I said in Attack of the Clones, I am one of those people who don't mind Yoda using the lightsaber. I think it's totally fine. I understand, like I said, people who have a gripe with it. I get that Yoda is more about the Force and less about fighting and the lightsaber, but this is a Yoda, he's the Grand Master of the Jedi Council. I think that I buy the fact that he was trained, obviously, with the lightsaber and that he knows how to use it, and it is, the most powerful Jedi against the most powerful Sith, and it is brother against brother in Anakin versus Obi-Wan. These fights are obviously over-choreographed. I think that's been said plenty of times, but you can't deny there is a hugely cinematic quality to both of them. Yes, the Anakin Obi-Wan fight goes on for too long, but I think I'd rather have it go on for too long than too short, to be quite honest. Especially having seen the fight in Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series, I think that having the fight just be long and like 30 minutes long, I think is much better than having it be 8 minutes or whatever. And, like a lot of things in Star Wars, there are a lot of parallels here. Obviously, you have the birth of Darth Vader with the birth of the twins Luke and Leia, who will become the New Hope. Look, for all of the dumb high ground stuff, Ewan McGregor just sells it. He completely sells the fact that he's heartbroken over the fact that Anakin is lost. The I hate you thing it never works for me. Neither does the no that Darth Vader says at the end. But, at that point, I'm kind of like, it's almost over. It's been a fun ride. Let's not ruin it here. And that's basically what happens. We get the rise of the Empire. And yeah, that's Revenge of the Sith. Just a final note to say that it's kind of funny to me that Yoda loses to Palpatine and then he's just like, oh, I guess I'm going into exile. I think the Obi-Wan thing makes a little more sense. Obviously, we see in Obi-Wan Kenobi the series. It's weird how I'm referring to that so much in this video, but after having seen that, it obviously makes some sense because that sort of fills in what happens afterwards, and it kind of feels weird that Obi-Wan just kind of leaves Anakin there to smolder into a marshmallow without checking that he's dead, which is what he set out to do. Like, that is what Yoda says to him. He's like, Obi-Wan, you got to go kill him. And Obi-Wan's like, I don't think I can. But, that he says, I will do what I must. But anyways, that's what happens. And we get Darth Vader and Palpatine. The twins are delivered off to Organa and Owen and Beru. And that is Revenge of the Sith. It is absolutely the best prequel in my eyes. And dare I say, it's a good Star Wars movie. As far as how my opinion might have changed since I last saw the movie, as we have done in the previous two videos, and we will continue doing, just tracking how my opinions have changed about these movies, I don't think this particular viewing has changed my opinion that much, actually. I think I always liked Revenge of the Sith the most. I think it was darker, it was grimmer, but it was also the most, Star Wars-y. It felt closer in tone to Empire Strikes Back, or, just the darker parts of Star Wars, which I think is cool. And so, I think I always liked this movie. I think also, obviously, it doesn't have the things that really sunk The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. It doesn't have Jar Jar Binks, only for a couple scenes, and it rarely has the Anakin Padme love story. And when it does show up, it's not good, but it's not nearly as much of the movie as it was in Attack of the Clones. And for that, I think Revenge of the Sith is a pretty good Star Wars movie. Not a great one, not even close to an amazing one, but a decent little Star Wars film that leads very nicely into A New Hope. So that was my re-examination of Revenge of the Sith. I hope you guys enjoyed the prequel series, and I know there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with me. There will be some who agree with me, but that's okay as long as we're all being respectful in the comments. I am totally fine. I will be replying to all the comments as usual and just listening to your guys' thoughts on the prequel series. So if you enjoy these videos, make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and let me know what you think about Revenge of the Sith. Let me know what you're looking forward to in Solo: A Star Wars Story. And with that, guys, I will see you in the next one.